Welcome back. Thank you so much for not touching the dial. You're listening to Retalk on your most preferred radio, Q105.1 FM. It is time to look into national issues and see how they affect our daily lives as Nigerians. Of course, we sort out the wheat from the chaff. Let's begin with the issue of the day. Today, December 9, is International Anti-Corruption Day. The International Anti-Corruption Day is observed by the international community on December 9 every year. It is the day set aside by the UN to create awareness about the negative impact of corruption on nations and the need to fight it. The history of this annual commemoration dates back to October 31, 2003, when the UN General Assembly adopted the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Corruption is a complex socio-political and economic phenomenon that affects all countries. Corruption undermines democratic institutions, slows economic development, and of course contributes to governmental instability. Corruption also attacks the foundation of democratic institutions by distorting electoral processes, perverting the rule of law, and creating bureaucratic quagmires. The 2023 International Anti-Corruption Day seeks to highlight the crucial link between anti-corruption and peace, security, and development. It is then the right and responsibility of everyone to tackle this crime. On Retalk this morning, we spotlight the International Anti-Corruption Day, look into how we can reduce this long-standing menace in our society. To make sense of this, I am joined by a policy expert and a public affairs analyst. Anytime anti-corruption initiative is being discussed or implemented, he's always at the forefront. In fact, he has participated in lots of activities of the EFCC, the work against corruption and the likes. Mr. 𝐀𝐧𝐭𝐢-𝐂𝐨𝐫𝐫𝐮 joins the program via the telephone from Abuja. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Great. How is the Federal Capital Territory? I learned you are facing paucity of cash already. ATM not dispensing, POS could not get enough cash, and it's not even Christmas yet. Is it the same situation where you are?
Well, it is, but it's not biting hard as it has been reported in the media, so to speak. But the scarcity is getting intense, and there is a worry about the issue of first scarcity in some quarters as well. So we only hope that Nigerians, most especially the residents of Abuja, will have a smooth Christmas celebration without no need to worry over anything.
Okay, let's try and to reconnect the connection there so it can be as soon as one. I'll be right back. Yeah, Mr. Mike, are you there?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, today is International Anti-Corruption Day. Anytime we mention corruption, there is always the monetary perception of it, the naira and kobo. I mean, the moment you mention corruption, somebody's thinking money is involved. Make us understand what really constitutes this corruption that we're fighting as a nation.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, the world celebrates International Day of Anti-Corruption today. And just like it has been said, I think the word corruption itself, it is a global pandemic. Pandemic in the sense that it's dealing with both the young and the old, the men and the women, and of course, it is a trend across the world, an unfortunate trend at that. But when we look at what we call corruption in the true sense of it, it does not necessarily have to do with money alone. And what I call the attitudinal corruption as well. Attitudinal in the sense that being indolent, being expressing laxity in what one is expected to do, which of course at the end of the day will impact the productivity of a nation, will impact the productivity of an organization, to me, it is what I call the attitudinal corruption. And when we look at it, attitudinal corruption, financial corruption, they work hand in hand, because it takes someone with a weak mind, a mind that is unpatriotic, coming to office late, not doing your work as expected. It's a gradual process, and at the end of the day, the person will have no option than to migrate to what we call the financial corruption. But because of the economic state of things across the world, when we talk of corruption, there's this monetary thought about it, and of course, where it is abuse of what do you call it? Abuse of office, abuse of resources for either for personal gain, and this has to do with the selfish interest of man. Everyone just wants his need met at all cost. So the word "at all cost" now is where the problem lies. Must it be at all cost? No. And if it is to be at all cost, that's where the word corruption sets in.
That's impressive. Now, before we go into some of these reality checks, this year's theme is uniting the world against corruption. How do we make this happen?
Well, it is not sounding as a prophet of doom. It is somewhat impossible to make an attempt, or to say, okay, there is a plan to unite the world against corruption. It is a reality that we just need to face. But I think it won't be bad if a step is taken to say, okay, we want to unite the world against corruption. How do I mean? When we go back to history, I'm a Christian. When we go back to the Bible days, we know that corruption has been there. There are instances of corruption in the Bible, and thousands of years ago. So if the work in the dark age experienced corruption, how much more now that there is the digital system across everywhere, things are happening all over everywhere. Civility, expansion in different strata of the society. So to me, to say uniting the world against corruption is a good intention, but realistically, I don't think it's something that is achievable. However, we must salute global conventions. We must salute effort that is being made by international organizations, regional organizations, to say, okay, we need to fight graft, we need to fight corruption, we need to put institutional mechanisms in place to ensure that our common patrimony are not being looted, are not being taken away by a few individuals. So looking at it holistically, yes, we must continue to push, we must continue to make an attempt to say that the issue of corruption in the society is properly addressed. But to put an end to it is what I think it is somewhat impossible. But nations, institutions across the world, most especially across different nations, must continue to put energy together, must continue to put institutional framework together, must continue to design mechanisms that will help in addressing the issue of corruption, either financial corruption, either attitudinal corruption, as it may be called. So, to me, we must continue to push. We must continue to advocate for all of us to unite against corruption.
Okay, Mr. Mike, as a nation now, country Nigeria, have we made any progress in the fight against corruption? If the answer is no, of course, what are the challenges impeding our progress?
Yeah, we won't say we have not made a progress. Having institution in place, an anti-graft institution at that, to fight graft, to fight corruption in the country is a step. But another thing we should ask ourselves is the functionality of the institution. We are aware that graft agencies, the ICPC, the EFCC, and the Bureau, Code of Conduct Bureau, and other sister agencies like that. We know there is a public perception that they have been accused of being politically used at one time or the other. So if you go to the public and ask about the performance of EFCC and ICPC, they will tell you, okay, if for example, if a president does not like somebody, this phase, the president will instigate the EFCC against such person, all those political perception like that. And it is unfortunate that, there is a public perception in that angle. But what is most important is for the generality of Nigerians, or majority of Nigerians, to see that, okay, the institutions of government that we have are independent, devoid of political influence, and at the end of the day, they are really fighting to ensure that there is no graft in the system, and our common patrimony that has been looted are recovered. So to put it in a nutshell, I would say that yes, we have the institutions in place, but the question is, are they doing the work according to the act that established them, according to the law that established them? That is a subject of another conversation on its own. But I think as citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we must continually advocate for institutional reform, institutional strengthening, to ensure that, okay, the law that, the purpose for which all these institutions of government are established, or were established rather, that they are actually living up to that mandate. So it is our own, as citizens, to demand for accountability from these institutions of government.
Okay, now you just spoke about these institutional reforms and how we need to demand accountability. But then, do you think our constitution is possibly obstructing some of their activities? For instance, I know that he who pays the piper, of course, calls the tune. Now, is it correct to say that we have fundamental flaws in our constitution, because there is a limit to which some of these agencies can go? For instance, a governor cannot be touched while in office because he has immunity. So he has immunity to do what is wrong for 4 years or 8 years. Now EFCC or ICPC has no power. Isn't that a huge factor retarding our progress while we fight corruption?
Absolutely. When I talked about accountability demand, that's one of the things I was actually referring to, because there is no way we can say, yes, he who plays the piper dictates the tune. Yes, it is unfortunate that shall I say, the proverb is prevalent in our parlance, most especially when we talk about corruption or anti-corruption. But now the question is this, or the issue is this. Part of the reform we are talking about is, okay, the question about immunity, because we have seen governors that are using that they are really impugning on the right of others. In fact, I can't be mentioning names, all because they have immunity. So some of them, they use their own immunity to actually discharge impunity against fellow citizens, which ordinarily is not supposed to be. So irrespective of how high you have risen politically, irrespective of your political affiliation, whether you belong to the ruling party, you belong to the opposition party, whatever, connection you may have with the powers that be, when it comes to the issue of the use of law, I think the law should take its true course. And one of the things we should be demanding for, I belong to the civil society organization. This issue of immunity has been a subject of debate in Nigeria since only God knows. But I think it's something we know that is an impediment to the progress of Nigeria. How will a governor, you just feel like, okay, I am the almighty in this regard. Nobody can hold me accountable. Even some of them, they even have the effrontery to say, okay, let us meet in court. Because they know, and it is a public perception to say, okay, they know their way around the court. They can always get judgment. You see, judgment here today, counter injunction, all of those things, they are really they are impugning or limiting the progress of the nation. So I don't want to say Nigeria is moving progressively backward, but all of us must come together as citizens, but that love the country, loyal citizens, patriotic citizens, to say, no, end must come to these things. What are the gaps in our laws, and most especially the Constitution and the act establishing these institutions of government? How do we align the two together? How do we marry together? Where do we need to amend? What are the areas we need to expunge? What are the new things we need to add? So I think the constitution amendment should be a process. We had one before in the last administration of the president. I think it's not a bad idea if we are also beginning to talk about amendment to the constitution. Well, the body or language of the president reads that he's likely to actually walk that path, because I've heard him speak about corruption, anti-corruption on one or two instances like that. So we need to also begin to ask critical questions.
Hello, sir. Are you there?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, that's great. Now, we consistently posit that everyone must fight corruption, but a lot of Nigerians do not even know they have a role to play in the fight against corruption. What's the role of an ordinary citizen?
It is unfortunate that the NOA, that's the National Orientation Agency, the principal organization of government meant to enlighten citizens, meant to inform citizens, is not living to its mandate. It's not living to expectation. And in that light, most Nigerians, so to speak, are not aware that they are part of the advocacy, or they are part of the anti-corruption movement in the country. Everybody in Nigeria, every citizen of Nigeria is an anti-corruption advocate. So we must begin to ask questions. We must begin to engage. We must begin to participate. Just like it is being said that when you see something, you say something. So when you know that in any environment you find yourself and things are not going in the way they are meant to be, things are not going in the right pattern. So it is your responsibility as citizens to ask questions, irrespective of who the person may be, irrespective of his political office, irrespective of his party or religious affiliation. We must begin to ask questions. And fundamentally, let me say this again, a religious organization also should not be isolated, because everything should not be about, okay, do this, do that. We must also begin to conscientize. We must join the advocacy movement against corruption in Nigeria, because when we look at it, all political office holders belongs to one religion or the other. You are either a Muslim, you are either a Christian. So the religious leaders, the religious organizations must continue to do more about telling everybody why we need to support in the anti-corruption campaign. And importantly as well, the civil society organization that I belong, we are trying our best, and we can always continue to do more. So the effort must be on, but principally in all of these, unfortunately, and I'm saying that deliberately, that those who will even make amendment to some of these laws, they have one case or the other against their neck. So it will be somewhat difficult, somewhat difficult, so to speak. I wouldn't want to say impossible. It will be difficult to say somebody who is having a corruption case on his neck should come and amend anti-corruption law that will, at the end of the day, be a hook on his neck. It is just like telling a man to kill himself, which in the true sense of it, no man will want to take life out of himself or herself, as the case may be. So in essence, what we need to do, because no force is greater than the force of the determined people. When the people are determined, because when we look at the issue of corruption in Nigeria, where the education system is today is as a result of corruption. The state of health in Nigeria, health system in Nigeria today is as a result of corruption. The Japa syndrome that we are witnessing in Nigeria today, when we look at the link, it is connected to corruption, because people are not getting the dividends of democracy. So they will have to look for alternatives. And permit me to conclude as well that the issue of inflation in the land, people are really finding it difficult to meet their basic social needs. Even access to food is another problem. And in Yoruba, they will say that meaning a man will do everything humanly possible to make sure that something enters his stomach. And at the end of the day, irrespective of the means, the most important thing is for him to get himself fed. And that is why we see that across the civil service, we are seeing all of these things manifested, even in the private sector. So all of us must continually work together. The media, most importantly, as well, because the media is a critical stakeholder in the issue of anti-corruption. So we must all continue to work together to ensure that the issue of anti-corruption or the fight against corruption is well and properly addressed in our system, minimally.
Impressive. Let's take a scenario, Mr. Mike, that has something to do with what we're talking about. Let's talk about our security officers, specifically the Nigerian police force. We saw how some officers, policemen, were cited in a video demanding money from a female biker who was on a tour of Nigeria from the Netherlands. The officers flagged down the biker, asking her where she was from and where she was heading. The Dutch replied that she was from the Netherlands and she was on her way to Abuja, apparently surprising the two officers. And they said, "Waiting you bring come. Oh yeah, now give us something." The woman asked why. And that's just one out of the travails of our drivers on road, even though these policemen have been arrested. But what are your thoughts?
That is what we experience when we have people that are not patriotic, people that are not loyal to the governance system of the nation. Imagine somebody coming all the way from the Netherlands to Nigeria as a tourist. What impression have you created? You have only proven, because you are more like the first point of contact to say, or if not the first, perhaps the second. You have to say, okay, what do you have for us? Asking that from a foreigner is just like putting the country on a national. Putting the country to a national shape. So it is all unfortunate that those who have been privileged to govern the nation in the past, they have not been. Yes, they have made an attempt, but they have not made serious attempts in addressing the issue of reform. You know what led to the last EndSARS campaign in the country is all of these things, and critical recommendations were made to say, okay, these are the things that should be, that the consideration should be given to police welfare. And I said it the other time, everybody is trying to survive in the country. Nobody is living in the true sense of it. Everybody is surviving. And one of the means of survival is to get something to eat. And it is worrisome, the trend that we are following, the trend that the police is following. But we must also commend the president, that's Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. At least he has given a mandate. There is a marching order to actually say, okay, the policing system in the country should be critically looked into. And now that we have the Police Service Commission in place, and we can also see what the IGP has been doing, how they have been reprimanding all these erring officers. We are seeing that, but we want to see more of that. And most importantly, the welfare of the Nigerian policemen should be given priority, because the issue of welfare is very important, very, very, very important. If they cannot meet their basic social needs from what they earn, there's practically no way they will not devise other means of getting means of livelihood. But we need to really all work together. Everybody must have a say, so that we can have a rich document or improved document that will help us to improve on the policing system in Nigeria.
Great. Now let's talk about prevalence of cybercrime. Of course, nothing has changed. Years back, you only find fraudsters at institutions of learning. Trust me, go to secondary schools today, you find them. They look at their teachers and they say, how much does he earn? I can pay your salaries for 6 months. So it does look like the society gave these guys a warm welcome. Talking about cybercrime, how did we get here? What's the way out?
Personally, this gives me a worry, because it's to me like we are sitting on a keg of gunpowder and waiting to explode at any time. Yes, under no condition is not justifiable for any young people to engage in cybercrime. But when we look at this issue holistically, what is it that has led to young Nigerians engaging in cybercrime so much that when you step out of the country, you find yourself in the airport in Ghana as a citizen of the giant of Africa, Why other citizens are filing up to have their way, you are told to step aside so that you can be thoroughly and properly checked. It's because of what young Nigerians they have done to our image. What they have done to our image, how they have been, the news around the world about what young Nigerians are doing. What has led to that? Unemployment. What has led to that? Failure in parenting. What has led to that? Failure in our social value system. The society no longer prioritizes value system. Everybody just want to make money at all costs. Get rich quick syndrome. So how do we get this addressed? I'm always of this opinion, and I picked that ideology from Professor P.L.O. Lumumba. He said, when education system is free of knowledge, there is no way the society will not be enmeshed in crisis. Let us critically examine ourselves. When as students, they find themselves 8 months, 9 months, sometimes a year at home, a session at home because of strike. Just like an idle hand is a devil's workshop. There's no way they won't get themselves enmeshed in all of this mess. And at the end of the day, it has implication on the image of the nation. It will destroy the perception that other community of nations they have about us. And critically speaking, it will promote the crime rate in the country because everybody now wants to get a means to live. So everybody wants to get a means to survive. So we need to put, and it's part of the institutional reform that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Well, education needs to be critically looked at. Our value system as a nation. What is our value system? That has to be sung into the hearing of Nigerians every day. That Nigerians must begin to embrace national value, patriotism, loyalty, integrity. Because why you get what does not belong to you ordinarily. So all of these things, we must begin to look at them just for us to have a better nation. Otherwise, we can imagine what will become of Nigeria in 5-10 years to come. Just imagine what we are experiencing now. We can only say we hope Nigeria gets.
Your account is too low for this call.
I think that's an error on the part of Telecom. Let's try to reconnect with Mr. Michael Lagon just as we wrap up the program right now. Hello, Mr. Mike, are you there? Hello?
Thank you. I can hear you.
Okay. Now let's wrap up. Before I let you go, I got a text right now that you should better explain what you meant when you said talking corruption, Nigeria is progressively backwards.
Yeah, well, the word progressively backward is just a personal opinion. We have the institutions in place, but it appears that the efforts in fighting graft in the nation is not yielding the needed results. In the sense that we have instances of when someone is being alleged to have taken huge sum of money in the system and there is an adjudication that the person should pay a fine of so and so amount, haven't been found guilty. What happens to the millions of naira or billions of naira the person has taken? We are seeing institutions, anti-graft institutions that because of the perception is there, public perception is there, that they are being used for political purposes. Right. No, it shouldn't be. They are meant to be independent, do their job, make sure that the perception because they are the frontline organizations. I'm talking of the ICPC, I'm talking of the EFCC. They are the frontline organization in addressing the issue of graft in the nation. So they have to create a perception to say that they are independent, they are apolitical. But I think we need to really look at it that when corruption is being when there is a fight against corruption, corruption also will fight back. We should equally bear that in mind. But the needed mechanism has to be in place so that if corruption is making an attempt to fight back, and the corruption also will be crushed. That is what I actually meant in that regard. So a lot of funds are being stashed away. I mean, we have seen cases in court. We have political office holders having cases on their neck. Even to me, if a man has been alleged of corruption, so I think in the first instance, the person should not even have the legal right to contest elections. And if I am to propose an amendment, that should be one of the things that should be considered in the amendments to the anti-graft law in the nation. Once you are being accused, go to the court, clear off yourself, get off the hook, and if there is an injunction that, okay, truly you have engaged in corruption, you should not even find yourself to say you want to contest election again in this history of the country, because what do you want to achieve even when you find yourself in political office? So we should critically look at all of these amendments, and any forum I find myself, these are thoughts that I will equally be sharing. And I think the media also should support in this regard.
All right, many thanks to you, Mr. 𝐀𝐧𝐭𝐢-𝐂𝐨𝐫𝐿. He's our policy expert and, of course, our public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for joining the program this morning, Mr. 𝐀𝐧𝐭𝐢-𝐂𝐨.
Thank you.